When coming up with some of the harmony parts that ended up being the keyboard player's parts within SolTunes, I found myself wanting to use some sounds that were more like swells and pads that didn't have as much attack and sort of masked where the downbeat was. So if we look at the amp envelope here, I really like these visual ways to see ADSR. So we can see really clearly that this sound has got a nice slow attack and a lot of great sustain. It's going to end up, even when I let go, we're going to hear it for quite a while. So this is sort of exactly the atmospheric paddy thing that I want to be able to use, but this poses a really specific issue in a project where we're just looping these sounds over and over. That issue is that any sort of tail, be it a reverb or a long sustain, looping back to a sound that doesn't have an immediate attack is going to get us this sound, which is not very appealing. Right there. We've got that click when the tail of the previous loop is stopping suddenly before the attack of the next loop begins. We can't have that happening every 4 bars. It's going to totally ruin whatever piece this ends up in. So the workaround that I found for this, because when we listen to it in our DAW and I loop it and play it back, we have no issue because the DAW is not going to stop the sustain. That MIDI note is triggering the amp envelope the way it's built so that the sustain is going to happen. We can see really that these chords aren't held out, but this one is really going all the way to the beginning of this next sound. But what's nice is despite the fact that these are gridded, that late attack masks where the downbeat is in a way that I find really interesting and satisfying. So I wanted to maintain that. So how do we get this to work? When we bounce out just a single loop, we get that terrible click. But I discovered that if I were to loop it 3 times and render that sound, this middle loop includes the tail from the first loop at its beginning. So if I bounce this out as its own file, what I'm going to end up with is an audio file that can loop perfectly. Watch where the loop is happening and listen to it. You can't even tell that really that sound isn't beginning until 2 seconds in. The attack is set to be 2 seconds before it reaches its full potential. So around here is where we're reaching our peak amplitude. But this is the only way I could get these kinds of sounds. You know, I didn't want to have to limit the types of sounds that we had available to us. And so constantly throughout the project, we're working out these little workarounds to make the medium not be too limiting. Sometimes when a medium is limiting, it can sort of spark creativity in these ways because it forces you to come up with ideas to still get the sound that you're hearing in your head.